Mrs. Reed, back to share another read aloud with you. Today we're continuing Charlotte's Web, written by E.B. White. The last chapter we read was chapter 5. Today, obviously, we're going to be starting chapter 6. And if you recall from chapter 5, Wilbur had just learned what spiders like to eat, and he was watching Charlotte kind of in disgust and horror that she was wrapping up a fly, getting ready to keep it for a snack. And they learned about each other, that they have different ways of acquiring food and nourishment. So it might seem gross to Wilbur, but it's normal for Charlotte. And that's how she gets her food. Wilbur was also settling in for a nap. So as usual, sit back, relax, and get ready to be a listener. Chapter 6, Summer Days. And holy summer day it is. The early summer days on a farm are the happiest and fairest days of the year. Lilacs bloom and they make the air sweet, and then they fade away. Apple blossoms come with the lilacs, and the bees visit around among the apple trees. The days grow warm and soft. School ends and children have time to play and fish for trout in the brook. Avery often brought a trout home in his pocket, warm and stiff, ready to be fried for supper. Do you remember that Avery is Fern's brother? Now that school was over, Fern visited the barn almost every day, and she would sit quietly on her stool. The animals treated her like an equal. That must mean that they trust her. The sheep lay calmly at her feet. And around the 1st of July, the workhorses were hitched to mowing machines, and Mr. Zuckerman climbed into the seat and he drove into the field. All morning you could hear the rattle of the machine as it went around and around and around, while the tall grasses fell down behind it. The cutter bar would cut down swaths of hay. The next day, if there was no thunder shower, all hands would have to help rake and pitch and load, and the hay would be hauled to the barn in the high hay wagon, with Fern and Avery riding on the top of the load. That sounds kind of fun. Then the hay would be hoisted, meaning pulled up, sweet and warm into the big loft, until the whole barn seemed like a wonderful bed of timothy and clover. It was fine to jump in. It was perfect to hide in, and sometimes Avery would find a little grass snake in the hay. And he would add it to the other things in his pocket. Oh my gosh, I don't think I would put a snake in my pocket. Although I wouldn't put a fish in my pocket either. Early summer days are jubilee time for birds. Jubilee is like exciting, happy times. In the fields around the house, in the barn, in the woods, in the swamp, everywhere, love and songs and nests and eggs. From the edge of the woods, the white-throated sparrow, which must come all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, calls, "Oh, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody," on an apple bough. The phoebe teeters and wags its tail and says, "Phoebe, Phoebe." The song sparrow, who knows how brief and lovely life is, says, "Sweet, sweet, sweet," interlude, meaning pause. "Sweet, sweet, sweet." If you enter the barn, the swallows scoop down from their nests and call, "Cheeky, cheeky," they say. I love how the author E.B. White is using these descriptive words to tell us what the sound of these birds are making. In early summer, there are plenty of things for a child to eat and drink and suck and chew. Dandelion stems are full of milk, clover heads are loaded with nectar, and the Frigidaire, which is a refrigerator, is full of ice-cold drinks. And everywhere you look, everywhere you look, it is life. Even the little ball of spit on the weed stalks if you look at it and poke at it, it has a green worm inside. And on the underside of that leaf of the potato vine is bright orange eggs of the potato bug. I did not know there was such a thing. It was on a day early in summer that the goose eggs hatched. This was an important event in the barn cellar. Fern was there sitting on her stool when it happened. Except for the goose herself, Charlotte was the first one to know that the goslings had arrived. So Charlotte's got a pretty good perspective hanging from the top of the barn. The goose knew a day in advance that they were coming. She could hear their weak little voices calling from inside the egg. She knew that they were in a desperately cramped position inside the shell and were most anxious to break through and get out. So she sat quite still and talked less than usual. When the first gosling poked its gray-green head through the goose's feathers and looked around, Charlotte spied it and made an announcement. So Charlotte's keeping track. I am sure, she said, that every one of us here will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremittent effort and patience on the part of our friend Goose, she has now something to show for it. The goslings have arrived. May I offer my sincerest congratulations? Thank you, thank you, thank you, said the goose, nodding and bowing shamelessly. Thank you, said the gander. That would be the male goose. Or the dad. Congratulations, shouted Wilbur. How many goslings are there? Goslings, I'm sure you can determine, are baby geese. I can only see one of them, Wilbur said. Oh, there are 7, said the goose. Oh, fine, said Charlotte. 7 is a lucky number. Oh, luck had nothing to do with this, said the goose. It was good management and hard work. At this point, Templeton showed his nose from his hiding place under Wilbur's trough. Templeton. He glanced at Fern, and then he crept cautiously towards the goose, keeping kind of close to the wall. Everyone watched him, for he was not well liked and he was not trusted. Remember, Templeton is the rat. Look, he began in a sharp voice. You say you have 7 goslings, but there were 8. What happened to the other egg? Why didn't it hatch? It was a dud, I guess, said the goose. What are you going to do with it? Templeton asked, his round, beady little eyes fixed on the egg. You can have it, replied the goose. Roll it away and add it to that nasty little collection of yours. Templeton had a bad habit of picking up things, especially unusual objects, and storing them in his home. He saved everything. Certainly, said the gander. You may have that egg. But I'll tell you one thing, Templeton. This is the gander, so this is the dad talking. If I ever catch you poking your ugly rat nose around our goslings, I'll give you the worst pounding a rat ever took. And the gander opened his strong wings and he beat them in the air to show his power. He was strong and brave, but the truth is, both the goose and the gander, meaning the mom and the dad, were worried about Templeton, and with good reason. That rat had no morals, no conscience, no scruples, no consideration or decency. No milk of rodent kindness, no compunctions or higher feelings, no friendliness, no anything. He would kill a gosling if he could get away with it. The goose knew that, everybody knew it. This is Templeton eyeballing. The goose and the gander and fern are all giving him kind of a stink eye. Take your egg and go. And Charlotte's up there in the corner, keeping an eye out. With her broad bill, the goose pushed the unhatched egg out of the nest, and the entire company watched in disgust while it rolled away. Even Wilbur, who could eat almost anything, because remember, he's a pig, was appalled. Imagine wanting a junky old rotten egg, he murmured. A rat is a rat, said Charlotte. She laughed a tinkling little laugh. But, my friends, if that ancient egg ever breaks in this barn, it will be untenable. What does that mean? Asked Wilbur. It means nobody will be able to live here on account of the smell. An old rotten egg? Yeah, that would smell. I won't break it, snarled Templeton. I know what I'm doing. I handle stuff like this all the time. He disappeared into his tunnel, pushing the goose egg in front of him. He pushed and he nudged until he succeeded in rolling it into his lair underneath the trough. A lair always indicates to me a negative kind of thing. Villains, bad guys, live in lairs. That afternoon, when the wind had died down and the barnyard was quiet and warm, the gray goose led her 7 goslings off the nest and out into the world. Mr. Zuckerman spied them when he came in with Wilbur's supper. Well, hello there, he said, smiling all over. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 baby geese. Now, isn't that lovely? That is the end of chapter 6. Get ready for chapter 7 tomorrow. It's called Bad News. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.